The price of silver has been on a bit of a tear recently. It's just recently touched $40. Will it go up? By the time you're watching this video, you'll probably know the answer to that question. But one of the interesting things about the fact that silver has continued on this upward trajectory is that it is starting to price certain physical precious metals vehicles out of the hands of people who like to stack silver. So we're going to talk about maybe the time having come for the new 5-ounce silver bar standard rather than the 10-ounce silver bar that seems to have been the standard for so many decades. If you're new to the channel, my name is Dub C. I would love to have you click on that subscription button. Maybe you've caught a couple of my videos in the past. Maybe you're visiting for the first time and appreciate you spending some time with me here today. Go ahead and click on that subscription button. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe to a channel. It's just a way to show some support. And if you're one of my returning subscribers, you guys are going to have to let me know what you think about this. Are you team 5-ounce bar, or are you still stuck with a 10-ounce silver bar? Have to admit, I'm starting to consider the 5-ounce silver bars probably more than I ever have before. If you're new to the channel, I like to begin my videos with a simple disclaimer. I am not a financial advisor. I'm not trying to offer you any kind of financial advice. I'm simply trying to share some of my experience having bought and sold precious metals and rare coins for the last 30 or 40 years. And I like to begin my videos with a concept that we can kind of fold back into the subject that we're talking about. I think that this is a really appropriate subject. This concept, rather, is the idea of divisibility. And I've talked about divisibility before in some of my videos where I've shot about kilogram bars or even 100-ounce bars of silver. And as fun as they are, a 100-ounce bar of silver is a great big massive piece of silver. It's very impressive looking. It's a lot of fun to hold. But a kilogram bar and a 100-ounce bar of silver have some indivisibility that can be problematic, especially as the price continues to go up. A 10-ounce bar of silver, let's just take for example, if you're one of those folks who seems to always have money slipping through your fingers, you get a paycheck, and by the end of the weekend, you notice that the $100 bill that you'd taken out and put in your wallet has been reduced down to 10 or 15 bucks, and you always wonder where that money has gone. I know that's definitely the case for old Dub C. So what some people like to do is to put a little bit of that money into physical precious metals. Makes it a little bit more difficult for that money to slip through your fingers. But let's say you buy a 10-ounce bar of silver. Let's say silver is theoretically $40 an ounce. That's going to run you north of 400 bucks. Next week, you blow a tire. And you've got to buy a new tire. You were able to get a nice one on sale for 150 bucks. But all of that money has slipped through your fingers except for that 10-ounce bar of silver. What do? Well, you don't have much of a choice. So you want to take the bus or you want to sell this 10-ounce bar of silver and use some of the proceeds to buy that brand new tire for 150 bucks. The problem is the indivisibility of a 10-ounce bar of silver. You got to sell every single ounce of silver contained within that 10-ounce bar. You can't sell part of a 10-ounce bar of silver. You have to sell this whole thing. And that becomes problematic. What if the price of silver has dropped out since you bought this 10-ounce bar? You have no choice but to sell every single ounce. Let's say that silver has dropped down to $30 an ounce. That $150 tire is going to cost you 5 ounces of silver, which is fine. You can at least access that money, but you're going to have to sell the entire bar. There's 5 ounces contained within that bar that you didn't need to sell at a loss. And what happens if a couple weeks later, a couple months later, you have a little bit more cash and you're able to buy another 10-ounce bar of silver? It's time for you to get some money back into the silver market. And now the price of silver has gone up considerably. Well, now you're having to buy that bar back, and it's going to cost you even more than it would have even those ounces that you didn't need to sell. You didn't have a choice because of the indivisibility of a 10-ounce bar of silver. But if you had 5-ounce bars of silver, you would have just been able to sell one of those, and you would have been able to access the funds that you needed and not have to sell the pieces of silver that you didn't need to sell. So divisibility, I think, becomes a little bit more appropriate with a 5-ounce bar of silver versus a 10-ounce bar. And you might be thinking to yourself, what about just generic rounds? What about silver eagles or silver maples? I think the idea, the concept of a premium is definitely true when it comes to these silver bullion vehicles. Generally speaking, the smaller the increment, the higher the relative premium. So if you were lucky enough to buy a 10-ounce silver bar, you might have paid $2 or $3 per ounce as a premium on that 10-ounce bar of silver, where you might pay $2 or $3 or $4 or $5 per ounce on those silver eagles. Those premiums seem to be higher the smaller the unit. And that's one of the reasons why 10-ounce silver bars became so popular in the first place. A lot less expensive to produce, and consequently, the manufacturers, the refineries, and hopefully the coin shops or wherever it was that you were buying your silver was able to sell them to you at a discount, at least a little bit of a discount, and that money adds up over years. So that's the idea of the divisibility of a 5-ounce silver bar. It certainly offers some advantages in some situations. I wanted to give a shout out to a few of my other YouTuber community members who have put out videos recently, or kind of recently, on their 5-ounce silver bars and what they think about these 5-ounce silver bars. And I'll put links to all of these guys down below. If you're not familiar with their channels, definitely stop by their channels, look at their perspectives. I always say that it's a really good idea to use YouTube as a tool. See who's got the information that you need. Check out as many different perspectives as you possibly can. Silver Bean Counter and Silverstruck, one of my favorite YouTubers, have both put out videos pretty recently about their 5-ounce silver bars. 365 Days of Silver put out a really good short where he was talking about all the different attributes that a 5-ounce silver bar has. In fact, it was him who kind of put this concept into my mind. I've been kicking it around for a few weeks now. And my good friend Kansas Kid put out a video not too long ago about his 5-ounce silver bar. So again, I'll put links to all of their channels down below. Take a look at them, subscribe to their channels also. Lots of really good information from lots of people out here on YouTube. We're going to talk a little bit about Silvertown. We'll talk a little bit about International Vaults Refining. We'll talk a little bit about Engelhard and Academy. I've got an interesting piece here in this velvet box that will kind of lead us into a different direction if you like this 5-ounce increment. There are lots of other options that maybe you're not thinking about so much, so we'll touch on those, including one that I think has some potential that has come out from the United States Mint over the last 20 years. Silvertown, one of America's oldest refineries, founded in 1949 as a coin shop. And Silvertown produced a lot of these old pour-styled bars, cast bars, poured bars. And the interesting thing about these Silvertown pieces is that these are the original bars that they put out in 1973. The website allengelhard.com dates these to 1973. And what differentiates these bars, and we've talked a lot about retro bars recently with the new revived Engelhard series that have come out recently. These Silvertown bars we know are part of that original 1973 series because they spell out the word F-I-N-E. Silvertown has produced retro bars that look a lot like these kinds of bars, but they produced them in the last 10 or 15 years. And in that case, instead of spelling out the word fine, it just says FS period, fine silver period. So they don't actually spell it out on the new bars. It's just FS period. That's the easiest way to tell if you've got a retro bar or one of the original bars. But Silvertown has also put out a lot of minted 5-ounce silver bars. In fact, I think that they are one of the leading refineries who has really bought into the idea of the affordability of the 5-ounce silver bar as an option. If the 10-ounce silver bar is being priced out of your hands, the 5-ounce silver bar is an interesting option, and I think Silvertown has really embraced that concept. They have lots of different offerings. We'll talk about that in just a second also. International Vaults Refining, these were 1970s, and it's kind of funny to look at this set because I always think in the back of my head, oh, I don't really have any 5-ounce silver bars, or I've got a couple of them, but nothing that I could really make a video about. Looking down at this set when I'm looking at something like 10 or more 5-ounce silver bars, yeah, Dub C, you're getting old. You're forgetting that you actually do have quite a few of these. These all came from the Lydian Hoard, and what makes these International Vaults bars interesting is that they are actually a 5-ounce class silver bar. When manufacturers were making these types of silver bars in the 1960s and 70s, even the early 1980s, they did their best to pour these to the weight that they were looking for. In this case, they were trying to pour it to a 5-ounce. But they often went a little bit over. Sometimes they went a little bit under. So somebody had to actually weigh each of these bars and then stamp the weight on these bars too. If you're familiar with the channel, you know that these are discovery bars. The stacking community didn't know that there were these International Vaults bars that have their logo and the information that you see there on the side of the bar. All Engelhard didn't have this information on their website, and they were kind enough to confirm that these were somewhat scarce, these new bars, newly discovered bars that have the information stamped on the side. In fact, they've estimated that there are only about 10 of them out there, and you're looking at 5 of them right now. So this represents a pretty good portion of the known examples of these side-stamped International Vaults 5-ounce silver bars. These are a great option if you find one. I definitely recommend picking it up if you're not going to pay much of a premium, right? I've talked about this 5-ounce Engelhard silver bar recently too. We did a series about 1-ounce and 10-ounce Engelhard silver bars. This is called the Big TOZ, and that's because it's TOZ right here. Troy ounce is what that stands for. This is a really cute little bar, a 5-ounce bar from Engelhard. You can see just how different the styles, the shapes, and everything else is from one manufacturer to a next. It really varies quite a bit. And when you're looking at something like this bar that we'll talk about in just a second from Academy, it's definitely a strange shaped bar, a little bit of an interesting style and design. Lots of fun, different varieties when you're looking at these. These, of course, are all these older poured or cast style bars, but the proliferation of those minted bars, often sealed in vinyl. They often have really nice proof-like surfaces, really beautiful designs on them. While it's fun to collect and stack these old vintage silver bars, those newer style bars are so much easier and so much more affordable most of the time that it gets to be a pretty nice option also. So that leads us to the Academy bar. Academy started in the 1980s. They were acquired by a company called Brush Engineering, which became Materion, which was then acquired in 2012 by a little company called Scottsdale. So this company, this bar, traces its roots back 30 years ago or more, and it is what we now think of as Scottsdale. Academy silver bars are pretty cool. This one was part of another hoard. This is part of the Springfield hoard. And what makes this bar interesting is that it does not have the weight on it. This is one of those bars that you just have to pick up and weigh yourself. Incidentally, about 4.85 troy ounces. So this is still definitely a 5-ounce class bar. Interesting to think that I've got this many 5-ounce bars, and I always just kind of think that I've got a couple, 2 or 3. I mentioned that we would talk about this last one in the case here because I think this offers a different option. If maybe the bars are becoming a little bit too expensive, this is an interesting piece from the Vienna Mint, and this is celebrating the 400th anniversary of the first dollar. This is a Joachimsthaler. From 1486 to 1986. But it's kind of neat because you can see that it actually says 999 here at the very bottom. And if I flip it over, and this case is a little bit wonky, let's see if we can get this out without causing any damage. It actually says 5 Unzen there at the bottom. That is German for 5 ounces. So I think a 5-ounce silver coin or round is another viable option. You know, one of the reasons that rounds became so popular in the first place is because a silver bar actually takes more money to produce than a silver round. So let's think about these silver coins or coin-shaped objects. If you think maybe the 5-ounce amount is the right amount for you, these can be an interesting option also. There are modern American mints who put out 5-ounce silver bars. This is a listing from JM Bullion I just pulled off the internet a few moments ago, but you can see that they've got all sorts of different listings here. There are lots of fun varieties from Silvertown for the 5-ounce silver bars. Silvertown puts out lots of different varieties. Monarch Precious Metals, they're out of Oregon. They put out really beautiful, kind of an old pour style bar also. Scottsdale, we just talked about them a moment ago, puts out those nugget bars. Those are kind of cool. Sunshine Minting of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Sunshine produces the blanks that are used in a lot of United States silver coins, right? They are a supplier for the United States Mint. You know they've got things going right if they're supplying the U.S. Mint. And right now, and JM Bullion has this on sale. Who knows if it's going to be on sale by the time you see this video. So definitely do some comparative shopping. But take a look at JM Bullion. 5-ounce silver bars from Sunshine. They are selling them right now for about $2.50 per ounce premium over the melt value. That's a pretty low premium, especially if you're paying $4 or $5 an ounce for a silver maple or a silver round or a silver eagle. Tend to be a little bit more expensive than that where I am. So there are lots of American mints who put out these pieces. But like I said, the interesting thing about this Vienna piece from 1986, limited mintage, about 1,000 pieces made. This is a pretty neat piece. But there are tons and tons of pieces made by sovereign mints all over the world. The 5-ounce silver coin seems to be becoming kind of the new class leader, whereas before maybe the 10-ounce coin or even the kilo coin was kind of the thing. But again, I think mints are recognizing that this $40-ish per ounce range is starting to price people out of the market. They just can't afford to buy a kilogram at a time. So maybe the 5 ounce coin is going to start emerging from this, the ashes, the same way that maybe the 5 ounce silver bar is starting to maybe take over from the 10 ounce silver bar. We've got lots of different examples of the modern coins, the 5 ounce rounds. The Royal Mint has put out a lot of really interesting things, not just the Queen's Beast, but obviously they have lots of different series. The Royal Mint in London puts out coins, but they also put out medals that hit that 5 ounce mark. Take a look at them. The Perth Mint, one of the favorites of people who stack modern stuff. They've got the horse, the swan, the dragon, the snake of that lunar series. Lots and lots of different examples. You can find all the different koalas and everything else that come out from Australia as well. I think they are a really interesting possibility. Germania Mint, they are based in Poland, if I remember correctly, seems to put out a fair number of these 5 ounce silver pieces, not necessarily a silver coin, right? It has to be made from a sovereign country and it has to have a face value on it to technically be a coin. It really starts to lose its definition when we start talking about these 5 ounce pieces. No one's going to spend a 5 ounce silver coin, right? And we'll talk about that in just a second. One of the most popular, but one of the most expensive 5 ounce silver coins has to be the Mexican Libertad. These pieces seem to have crazy premiums. So if you can find one, especially if you can find one with its original packaging and it doesn't have any damage to it, or if you're lucky enough to get one of those pieces that's been slabbed by NGC, for example, and you're not going to pay a wild premium on those, I think the Libertads definitely have legs. This is a series that no matter how many people seem to jump into the Libertad pool, the prices go up and up, higher and higher. Is it going to last? I don't know. I wish I had been loading up on these more modern Libertad scarcities back in the day, and I'm just stuck with lots and lots of the 1 ounce Libertads. I guess I'll have to just deal with that. So modern coins, I think, make for an interesting option if the bars are not quite what you're after. They offer some things that a lot of silver bars don't have, right? If you're looking at a modern silver bar, you're probably not looking at something that has a lot of collector potential. But the silver coins that come from these sovereign countries, right? If it's from the actual mint of that country, then you have usually a much more limited mintage, and you also seem to have somewhat of a collector base. The fact that a lot of these coins do have a year on them means that they are going to age a little bit more over time because of attrition, people wanting to celebrate a particular holiday or maybe a birth or something like that, an anniversary. Those dated pieces seem to kind of hold value a little bit better than a generic bar that maybe just doesn't have a date on it at all. It's just a way to own cheap silver. You got to compare and contrast the premiums on something that has some collector appeal versus the premiums on something that is just an inexpensive way and a divisible way to own silver. I mentioned that I talk about one thing that I've been kind of kicking around in the back of my mind for a while, and I've had a few of these pass through my collection, my stack, over the last several years, and they never seem to land very long. But I'm starting to think that maybe, if the 5 ounce silver bars time has come, maybe it's time for the 5 ounce America the Beautiful coins. This is a peculiar series that the United States Mint started putting out in 2010. They made these through 2021, if I remember correctly. And what's interesting about these is that these are almost exact copies of the circulating America the Beautiful quarters. Those have state historic sites or national parks on them, that kind of thing. They look just like the circulating quarter, except they are a great big 5 ounce silver round. This is 999 pure silver. And they are monetized too. That makes them a legitimate coin from the United States Mint. How much are they monetized for? 25 cents. A 5 ounce silver coin with a 25-cent face value is a very strange thing. But I've always kind of discounted these as being kind of a silly thing. They don't really seem to find a place in many people's collection. But the fact that these stopped being made in 2021 means that they're starting to get a little bit of an age to them. If you picked up one of the earlier ones, it's already 15 years old. Attrition, melting, the fact that nobody ever seemed to really care much for the America the Beautiful 5-ounce series. Sometimes we call them pucks within the industry because they look about the same shape and size as a hockey puck. These pieces were never made in very big numbers in the first place. A lot of them are below 40,000 pieces. It sounds like a pretty big amount, but when you compare that to other coins that the United States of America releases, 40,000 pieces is quite small. There are a couple different versions of these. Some of them have kind of a brushed finish. Some of these pieces have mintages as low as about 13,000 pieces. That is a small mintage. And again, because they were unloved for so long, the number of pieces that have been melted, forgotten about, scratched, beat up, dented, thrown into those cheap lots that dealers sell sometimes, these pieces might have some potential. We like to call those sleepers in the coin collecting community. And the fact of the matter is that often sleepers never really wake up. This is a coin, an issue that seems like it should have some value, but for some reason people just never collected it. Sometimes those sleepers do wake up. And if you're able to buy some of these at the ground level, especially if you can get certified MS70 or SP70, depends on the finish on them and the third-party grader that's grading them. If you can get those 70s and you don't pay a premium for them, you've got 5 ounces of pure silver with a limited mintage that is already starting to age and a specific date on them, I think there's some potential there. I think that's really cool. I looked at eBay right before I started shooting this video, and you're going to pay a little bit more of a premium on these pieces than you do for some if you're buying off of a venue like eBay. I found several examples with a premium of about $7 an ounce. That's not that much more than a lot of my local dealers are asking for Silver Eagles. But if you do a little bit of shopping, if you really do some comparative shopping, if you're buying them raw, if you're buying them locally, see if maybe you can get those premiums down to $4 or $5 an ounce. This is an interesting option. It's still 5 ounces of pure silver, but it's backed by the United States government. It's got a date, it's got a mintage, and it's got some collector appeal. I think it's an interesting thing to think about. What do you think about the 5-ounce revolution? Are we ready for it? Is it really not going to take off the way that the 10-ounce bar has become the standard for silver stackers everywhere? Is this the new standard? If prices continue to be as high as they are, and if people continue to want to stack silver, physical metal, then some of the options have to be a little bit smaller, I think. We're always going to be looking for those less expensive options, in a 10-ounce silver bar at a $400+ lift. That's pretty heavy for a lot of people. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. Love to hear your thoughts. Are you a stacker of the 5 ounce? Do you like the 5 ounce? Have you been team 5 ounce for years now, wondering when Dub C was going to catch up with you? Are you more of a fan of the 10-ounce bar, or are you a fan of the 1 ounce, be it a round a bar or an actual sovereign coin? Love to know your thoughts also. If you have questions about anything that we talked about here today, by all means, leave a question. You know, I'm fond of saying if you've got a question, there's a good chance somebody else does. Let's see if we can answer it for everybody. I premiere new videos pretty much every Friday evening, and I'm usually there during the premieres. Hopefully you're watching this video with me on a Friday evening. If you are, go ahead and type and say hi, Dub C. Love to have you be part of that group of people. It's always a fun time to premiere a video, watch it with you for the first time, and we almost always go live immediately after for kind of a deeper dive about what we just talked about, but the floor is wide open. As long as we're talking about coins or precious metals, everything is fair game. Those live streams usually go on for an hour, sometimes a couple of hours. It's a great way to meet other people in the community, to have conversations, to take a deeper dive, to ask all sorts of questions. Those live streams are a blast, and I always look forward to the live stream. A great way to start the weekend. Go ahead and subscribe if you haven't done that yet. I like to end my videos saying, always be learning. And I want to thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey as we go deeper into the world of coins and physical precious metals.